Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Health and Human Services and Aging Committee, Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. Can we have a call to order, a roll call, please?
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Sweeney is absent. Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner is absent. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent. You do not have a quorum.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make an announcement that we are, some of us are visiting the Franklin County Jail today because that is something that we are looking to endeavor here. So we will have some visitation down there. It kind of collided with the meeting today, so I apologize, but all of my colleagues that are missing are doing their due diligence for the county. Anyone signed in, Madam Clerk, for public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one person signed in for public comment. Lou?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Very good to know that right now they actually take the things seriously about this jail issue. So now county council member can all go there to visit. Of course, that will make less people in this meeting, but still, there's no difference for me. I'm here to definitely support our resolution for the foster care kids. But I also want to remind the council members, we should also give the same support to the kinship care families. They are doing the same hard work, but they have never got the same resources as the foster parents could get, and which I think that's something we can improve. Then the other thing, of course, since we're talking about lots of people needing help, last night when I went back to the Hale, for example, I got into a situation with a person staying there. However, the person working there coming to handle it, this person was honest. She didn't see how that happened. However, I got threatened that because she said she wanted to call police on me if I don't lower my voice. The strange thing is, if other people can raise a voice on me, how come I cannot use my normal volume to talk? So I raised that question to that person. After my incident was done, there was other people having verbal issues there, verbal fights. But the same person dealing with my situation actually did not threaten those people to get police. So we have a seriously workforce issue in health and human services. Even today, we know the county government cannot fulfill all the positions we need in order for everybody to do the work equally, instead of being overburdened and burned out. However, the workforce issue is not only the quantity of the people we can hire or stay on the job, it's also the quality. We want to make sure our foster parents, kinship parents or grandparents are good, are knowledgeable to know what they are doing to help the kids to grow. At the same time, we wish correction officers, their work can be acknowledged, not to be dragged down by correction officers in these correction facilities. The same thing, group home, homeless shelters, all these places. The workforce issue is as serious as people cannot imagine. I hope this year we can really put in real work in our health and human services, because it's also about the time we want to prepare for the levy. So if we don't really deliver the real services, how do you think the members in the community will actually support it? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Any other public comment?
That concludes our public comment.
All right. The approval of the minutes will be moved to the February 15th meeting. And today we have no contracts before us, but we do have two presentations. We have Child and Family Advocates of Cuyahoga County, as well as Neighborhood Leadership Institute. And we have our own Dave Greenspan in the audience, which we invite him to the front if he would like. All right. Whoever's presenting for Child and Family Advocates for Cuyahoga County, can you please come and present? We just want you to sit up front, Dave.
Thought you were walking up.
They made me do it.
I feel very honored that he came in just to hear me today. Good to see you, Dave. Thank you, Councilwoman Conwell, Councilman Miller. Thank you for inviting us down today to talk to you. The Cuyahoga County Family and Child Advocates of Cuyahoga County is the nonprofit that houses the court-appointed Special Advocates Program for Cuyahoga County. We've been in existence since 2016. We're brought about by a steering committee formed in 2015, chaired by William Kurtz, who used to be the court administrator at the old Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. We serve children of Cuyahoga County who are in the custody of the Department of Children and Family Services and/or active with juvenile court. We begun to serve a small number of children involved with the court who may not be in the custody of the county. When I was here in, I think it was 2017, a well-intentioned court administrator stood in front of the council and said, you know, the best thing about the Child Advocates of Cuyahoga County and the CASA program is it's free. It's not free. I think what she was trying to say was that court-appointed special advocates are volunteers. They're true volunteers. They don't get paid a salary. They don't get reimbursed for mileage on their vehicles. They don't get reimbursed for other expenses that they may have for a child. If they have a child out, they may take him or her to lunch or do other things. They don't get reimbursement for that. So they truly are volunteers. However, there is a cost associated to recruiting CASAs. There is a cost associated to training CASAs. No CASA would ever be appointed a case without going through thorough training and being thoroughly vetted. There's ongoing training for CASAs required by the state of Ohio. And we provide supervision to CASAs when they have cases. There is a cost to all of this. We used to have offices in the juvenile court building that were provided by the county at no cost to us. That began to change in 2017, 2018. We now rent office space over at Fairhill because we were not allowed to stay within the courthouse. Again, a cost associated to this. At this point in time, we exist on money that we raise through fundraising, grants. We have VOCA dollars, which are diminishing each year and going down. We do not have a contract with Cuyahoga County to pay for the court-appointed special advocates. However, the old GAL project, the Guardian Ad Litems, had a $109,000 annual contract to pay for the supervision and the programming around the Guardian Ad Litem program. The Guardians would be paid through fee schedule with the county as they still are today, but there was money made available to run the program, to train the Guardians, and to do other things with them. And we feel that it's important that this would return. So we're here today to educate you on what the CASA program is, to explore ways that we can be better partners with the county around its most vulnerable children, and specifically those children in the custody of the county who are the direct responsibility of the county, and ultimately to make a financial ask of you at the end of this hearing. With that, I'll turn it over to our Executive Director, Trish Quivinen, who will do a PowerPoint about our program.
Thanks, Jim.
Welcome.
Councilwoman Conwell, Councilman Miller, thank you for having me here today. I'm Tricia Cuivanen. I'm the Executive Director of the CASA program. I'm also a licensed social worker, and I've been with the agency about 4.5 years. It's really my pleasure to be here today and present a few slides to you about the CASA program, as well as the funding status of CASA. Okay, great. So the title of this presentation is How Public Funding of CASA Benefits Local Foster Youth. We have a couple objectives for today's presentation. We're going to talk about the history of CASA in Cuyahoga County. We'll talk a little bit about how CASAs serve vulnerable foster youth. We'll talk about the CASA program funding history, and then we will make a specific request for support. So just some background on CASA. CASA is a national child welfare program. There is actually the National CASA GAL Association, which is based in Seattle, Washington. CASA is over 40 years old. There are over 1,000 CASA programs in the United States. It's very well established, including with best practices for how to serve children. It was started by a juvenile court judge who felt that he did not have enough information to make rulings in regards to children that were on his docket that had been abused or neglected. He came up with the idea for an independent volunteer advocate who could be the child's voice in court, and he started the first CASA program in his courtroom in the late 70s. Since that time, CASA has grown, as I said, to be a national program with over 1,000 locations in the United States. As far as the history of CASA in our own county, as Jim alluded to, we have had the guardian ad litems here in our county for years that have served as attorneys and advocates for children. A guardian ad litem is a person that's appointed by the court to be a child's advocate. In Cuyahoga County, the advocate must be a licensed attorney. That is not necessarily the case in many other communities. A CASA can be the guardian ad litem. But in our county, only attorneys can be guardians. For this reason, we thought adding CASA would be beneficial. It provides another advocate that can come alongside the guardian and complement and augment the work of the guardian ad litem. There were several attempts to bring CASA here years ago in both the 90s and the 2000s. Those attempts were not successful for a variety of reasons. But in 2015, another steering committee was formed to try again. That steering committee had over 40 members from various county agencies, local hospitals, universities, and child welfare groups. That organization was successful in getting CASA launched in Cuyahoga County, and they began to take cases in 2016. From 2017 to 2019, the program was combined with the guardian ad litem program at the juvenile court. That meant CFACC served as an umbrella organization over those two groups, provided training and supervision for both groups, and was funded in part, as Jim alluded to a few minutes ago, by the county. We'll look at some slides in a minute that show how much. In 2019, citing budget cuts, the court said that they could no longer fund the CASA program and that they would be internalizing the guardian ad litem program and run it themselves. And that, unfortunately, CASA would have to leave the courthouse. Again, Jim mentioned this a few minutes ago. So at that time, we became separated from both the court and the guardian ad litems and moved into new offices at Fairhill Partners. We then continued the CASA program just ourselves as an independent program. There are 54 CASA programs in Ohio, so again, it's quite widespread. Here's a map that shows you everywhere that there is CASA. And you can see all the surrounding counties except Lake have a CASA program. Who are CASA volunteers? CASAs are just everyday people that have a heart for foster youth. They do have to complete 30 hours of training before they can serve as a CASA. The 30-hour training course is quite extensive. It's essentially almost like a graduate level course in child welfare. They have to be background checked, of course, interviewed, and before they can be appointed to a child's case. There's no special requirement to be a CASA volunteer, just meeting the basic qualifications. And we really encourage people from all walks of life to apply and to serve. We have pretty good diversity in our CASA program. We have a lot of different kinds of people, different ages, people from all different kinds of educational backgrounds, and we think that adds really important perspectives to a foster child's case. Roles and responsibilities of a CASA volunteer, there's basically 4 main responsibilities, and I'll go over them. The first is to investigate, and that's the information gathering stage. It's really about finding out what's going on with each individual child, understanding their living situation, their levels of safety, their risks, the strengths of the family, as well as the gaps the family may have in taking care of their children properly. Second step is to advocate, and that means the CASA really is there to be the child's voice in the foster care system as well as in the juvenile court proceedings. CASA provides a written court report for the jurists to consider as far as their opinion of the best interests of the child. CASAs facilitate conversations and collaboration among case parties. They facilitate the location of resources as well as service delivery. And again, trying to fill some of those gaps that would hopefully help families function better and provide the resources needed to take care of children. And finally, they monitor. I think this is one of the biggest assets of CASA. They monitor child safety. They are required to go out and visit CASAs in their home, visit children in their homes, schools, and residential care facilities if they happen to be residing in one of those. Get eyes on the child, if you will, help ensure that children are safe, that they're doing okay, that they have resources, that they're being supported, and so on. So this is one of the greatest assets of CASA. We know that Children's Services often is pressed for time and staffing. Maybe they cannot always visit children. I know they do what they can, and of course they are required to visit, but CASA can complement and augment that and help ensure that children are kept safe. Things CASA volunteers do not do. They do not give legal advice. They do not give therapeutic counseling. They do coach and mentor families, but it is not supposed to cross over into any kind of therapy or legal advice. They do not make placement arrangements for children. In other words, CASAs are not responsible to determine where children live. They do not give families money or gift cards or appliances or food or anything that the family may need. They help secure those resources, but they do not personally provide them. They do not transport children or family members in their vehicles. And they do not socialize with children or families really outside of the CASA role. Okay, so they try to keep their involvement strictly on the investigative part of the case and making their best interest recommendation. They do not serve, for example, as a big brother, big sister to the child, hopefully to help them ensure objectivity. Okay, the focus of a CASA volunteer, I think I've mentioned it, but I'll just go over it again. Ensuring that children are seen, that they are heard, and that they are engaged by the child welfare system. Helping to ensure that children's basic needs are met, helping to ensure the child has a safe and permanent placement as soon as possible, helping prevent a child's case from languishing in the system unnecessarily. So we know that some of these cases go on for years. There's research data that shows when a CASA is involved, the case is shorter. The children achieve permanency faster. They do not necessarily go further into the child welfare system. So that's really the end goal of CASA, is to help children achieve permanency as fast as possible. Permanency means a permanent, stable family of their own. Could be their family of origin, could be an adoptive family, or could be a long-term foster family. CASA helps to provide more resources and just improve the quality of child advocacy. Again, we define that as an adult who will speak up for a child in court and in the community. CASA provides that. CASA has more contact with children sometimes than other case parties. The attorneys are very busy. The child protection services workers are very busy. CASA can visit the child more often. CASAs come from different backgrounds, as I mentioned earlier. We think that that helps provide perspectives. And CASAs are fully supervised by trained staff members. So they are not rogue. CASA is not a volunteer who can do whatever they want, whenever they want. They are supervised and they are accountable for the way that they interact with children. Eligibility requirements to be a CASA: you must be 21 years or older, complete an application, complete an interview, undergo a background check, provide references, go through 30 hours of training, be available to attend court during the day, and commit up to 2 years to a child's case. This again goes to one of the great values of CASA. They can be involved with a child over an extended period of time. Average case length is about 14 months right now. Some cases are closed within a couple months. Some cases go on for years, 3, 4, 5 years, or even longer. Okay, if it's all right, I'm going to switch now to some metrics-based slides. So this slide shows the number of children that have been served by CASA, as well as the number of active CASA volunteers over a 7-year period. You can see number of children served was going along at a pretty good clip there. Then you see a big dip in 2020, which of course was the first year of the pandemic. The referrals from both the juvenile court and children's services dropped precipitously during those years. You can see that we've gradually come back up, and we're getting back up to those numbers. 2019 was our best year in terms of active CASA volunteers and number of children served. So our goal is to get that number back up as high as possible, both children served and active volunteers. This slide shows our total funding year to year. You can see there in 2017, we had a very healthy budget, almost $800,000. That was a combination of a very large VOCA award, county funding, which Jim alluded to for the GAL program, as well as some grant funding from local foundations. We really hadn't started our fundraising then. And you can see the gradual decline in funding, total funding year over year, to where now we're in the low 400s, almost half of our budget just 5 or 6 years ago. So this is basic funding contraction that we've experienced. Next slide shows our total funding as relative to the VOCA amount. Again, you can see the orange would be our total funding, the blue would be the VOCA. Again, you see that steady drop in the VOCA funding. It was very consistent for the first 4 years. Then it dropped by more than half. And we've experienced about a 60% loss total year to year in our VOCA funding. It's unknown to us if that could ever come back or at what percentage. So we have had the same VOCA award 2 years in a row. We find out in June what the possibility would be to potentially apply for more. However, there is no expectation that it would go back to the full former amount. Next slide shows other funding we've been able to secure. And so again, you can see in the beginning, we really didn't have as much of other funding. And by that, I mean donor funding, traditional philanthropy, event revenues, and grants from foundations, as opposed to public funding. So you can see we've really tried and have done a pretty good job to drive up those other sources of funding, diversify our funding streams, if you will, write new grants, get more money from donors. We were only getting about $20,000 a year from donors a couple years ago. Now it's up over 100. So we've built up relationships with foundations and companies and individuals to offset some of that public funding loss. So we're pretty proud of that. And then here's a slide that shows county funding compared to total funding over the past several years. So again, orange is our total funding. Blue would be the amount of county funding that we have received. So there you see the first 3 years of the Guardian Ad Litem program, getting about $110,000 contract annually from the county to help the attorneys. 2020, first year of the pandemic, also the year the GAL program ended. So our participation in the GAL program ended, rather. So we did not get funding that year. 2021, we were able to get essentially a COVID contingency grant, a one-time grant, which was very much appreciated and helped to sustain us through those difficult years when a lot of the other funding went away. And then in 2022 and so far in 2023, we have no county funding that we have received. Okay, and then this next one goes to other counties, adjacent counties' funding of CASA. Several of the counties around us fund CASA. Summit funds the most, almost $300,000 they give their CASA program. Lorraine funds at about $100,000 a year, and then Erie at about $65,000 a year. So there's good precedent for counties to fund their CASA programs directly. Several counties around us do that. Okay, and then this is our summary of our request, and I'm going to have Jim McCafferty come back up and present this part to you. Jim?
Thanks, Tricia. In closing, as I said at the beginning of our presentation, CASA serves the most vulnerable children in the county, and it continues to do so. Our VOCA funding has been cut dramatically, and our representatives in Washington are talking about the BG word, block granting. And in my days, when I was in the county, block grant was a nice way to say cut. And I know VOCA is considered for a block grant. If that happens, I think we can expect that VOCA funding would continue to decline. We're asking the Cuyahoga County consider a $100,000 annual contract with us that's going to allow us to replace federal money that we lose. And it's going to also allow us to expand. Recently, juvenile court has begun a process where they let a CASA staff member and eventually a CASA volunteer sit in at emergency custody hearings for children from the department. We're beginning to get cases out of that. And recently, in the last couple of weeks, got 5 new court assignments of children through that process. That's really good, and we want more kids from the court. The problem is, one of our CASA volunteer coordinators, can only supervise CASA with 30 cases at a time, up to 30 cases. And we keep our CASA caseload low. They only have 1 or 2 families, but they can only supervise 30 CASA volunteers at a time. We're soon going to run out of space to be able to take more children because we're not going to have the coordinator to supervise the CASAs. So as we recruit new CASAs, we have to be able to provide that ongoing supervision of those CASAs so that we can take more children. We don't have the money available to do that. So a $100,000 contract would not only replace some of the funding we've lost, it will give us the ability to hire additional volunteer coordinators when the time comes and we need to expand the program. With that, I will answer any questions, or Tricia, that either Chairwoman Conwell or Councilman Miller has.
Bill, do you have some questions? I have some.
I have a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
My first question is, what is the annual cost of the rental space?
I'll let Trish answer that. I'm the board chair, so I don't know as much about some of the particulars.
Thanks, Dale. It costs us about $14,000 a year to rent our office space at Fairhill.
And how many volunteers do you have currently?
We have about 67 active CASAs. We also have a training class in March, and that training class size will probably be between 15 and 20 people.
And how many children are currently being helped?
I believe we have about 48 to 50 cases right now. Some of those have more than one child on them. It fluctuates week to week, month to month, but we have served about 100 children a year for the last several years. Just to add to that as perspective, some CASA programs in other cities are very large. For example, in Chicago, the CASA program has about 1,200 volunteers, so they can serve substantially more children. We think for a community our size, 300 to 400 CASA volunteers would be a very successful program, and that would allow us to serve probably between 400 and 500 children a year, which would be our long-term goal.
So we're only able to serve a small portion of the number of children who could benefit from the program. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we work with the court to try to prioritize those children, meaning we look for children that are the most vulnerable, and we ask the court to assign us to those so that we can try to make the biggest impact. We try to make a deep impact, maybe more than a broad impact, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman, it's also interesting that in the last year or two, the court has asked us to start to take permanent custody children into the CASA program. We've done that. And the children they want to refer are the older children that have been in care for a while. And it makes me think about the kids that are at the Hunter Building. You can't intervene with those kids when they're in crisis and expect great outcomes. But if you can intervene with those children before they're in crisis, I call it further upstream, they never get to crisis, and you do have success with those children. More CASAs would allow more referrals to the program and the possibility of deferring children from that deep end placement, whether it would be at Hunter or it's at a residential treatment center, or whether it's in the detention home or what have you. So again, there's many ways that this program is cost effective.
My question would be, who administers the training? Who currently administers the training?
That's a great question. So it's actually a combination of people. Because we're in a large city with universities and hospitals, we do bring in subject matter experts from the community, physicians, psychologists, diversity training experts. Some of our staff also teach the sessions. Several of our staff are credentialed either in social work or law. So they have also completed the National CASA GAL Training Facilitator Program, which means National CASA has certified them to teach and to provide the training. So we try not to have anyone involved in training that is not prepared and equipped to transmit the needed content.
Those trainers, they're subject to change every time you have
They can be, yeah, because we work with who's available. We work with emerging trends in child welfare, for example. We occasionally have new topics, and so then we have to find a new presenter or trainer that's prepared and considered an expert in that topic. So our training has to align with the National CASA guidelines, but we do use local resources to actually transmit the content at times.
And how often are the volunteers trained?
For the preliminary 30-hour training that equips them to be a CASA, we've been offering training twice a year. We are trying to offer it more frequently this year. We're thinking up to 4 times a year. We'd like to reduce the amount of time between when people apply and when they can actually get trained. These ongoing training that we have, continuing education, is 12 hours a year. We provide typically 4 to 6 workshops that are an hour or 2 in length, and then we also encourage CASAs to find community-based training and to turn in their certificates that they have completed that. So they do 30 hours of initial training and then 12 hours per year of continuing education training. Many of our CASAs also are people that are professional people and that have their own credentials from their own fields. So we do have social workers, we have teachers, we have retired nurses. We have a pretty incredible pool of people, many of whom already have experience with child welfare or that are in the caring professions, if you will, the helping professions. And so they bring that expertise with them to their CASA role.
What type of funding, or what did you lose as an agency when the VOCA funds were cut?
The first year, we had a 30% cut, so we went from about 565 down to about 375. Second year, we received
We're talking volunteers.
oh, are you talking about funding or?
So yeah, just in general, what did you lose as an agency when you saw those VOCA dollars going down? How did it impact you?
Well, that's a great question. The impact as far as direct harm to the agency or our ability to recruit and train CASAs was minimal, frankly, because first of all, we rallied and we went to some of our community partners and said, hey, we've lost this money. Can you help us with some what we call contingency funding? We got some of that from the county as well as the Gunn Foundation and the Cleveland Foundation. And some of our donors also really stepped up to the plate and gave much larger gifts. So we immediately went into, preservation mode, if you will, and tried to figure out how we could replace those dollars and adjust some of our operations so that we didn't have to reduce training or the number of CASAs that would be available. I did lay off some people, for example. Unfortunately, I used to have a full-time staff attorney, and we eliminated that position. We also looked at other cost containment measures so that the core mission, which is recruiting and training and supervising CASAs, did not have to be sacrificed in any way.
So without that legal representation, who do you rely on now?
Well, we do have another attorney on staff. I have a licensed attorney. Her role is not to serve as a staff attorney, but she is licensed and can help us with the legal aspects of our work. We also have several attorneys on our board that serve and help us in various capacities, including going to court with CASAs if necessary, reviewing contracts and those kinds of things.
But they're basically volunteers.
The need for the full-time staff attorney really diminished when we didn't have the GAL program anymore. Because, for example, we weren't providing CLE, continuing legal education, to attorneys. And that we really didn't have as much of a need for the staff attorney.
The other counties that Mr. McCafferty mentioned that fund CASA, how do they differ? Do they differ in any way? So the ones that you mentioned that, one gives 250, one gives 100.
Well, Summit County is much larger, and they've been established for much longer. So Summit has had CASA for over 30 years, and they have almost 300 CASA volunteers, so they're much larger.
Okay.
And that's why they get a much bigger amount of funding, frankly. They are also housed at their juvenile court. They are considered part of the court. They're a court-based program. And they are broader in their scope. They're more entrenched into Summit County's child welfare system. So I think they're just deemed to be well-established and highly functioning, and they are able to get that good appropriation each year.
Councilman would also offer that in Ohio, there's a myriad of CASA programs across the state, the way they're constructed. The fact that in Cuyahoga County, an attorney has to be assigned every child in custody as a guardian ad litem is a local rule issue. It's not an Ohio state law issue. And there are counties in Ohio that don't have attorney guardian ad litems that, as Tricia referenced in her presentation, use CASAs in that role. Not advocating that. We're not saying get rid of the guardian ad litems. There's some very good guardian ad litems. We're saying this is a complementary service, and child welfare is an area where too many cooks don't spoil the broth, so to speak. So it's the way it's structured across the state is different depending on the political jurisdiction that the program is located in.
My final question would be, is there data out there that shows the benefits of children with CASA advocates and those without?
Yes, there is. Two things to point out is that the length of stay for children in care goes down when a CASA volunteer is assigned to their case, and the reoccurrence of abuse and neglect is minimized when a CASA is assigned to their case. Both extremely important outcomes, and I would say they're both outcomes that retrospectively save county government money. Children and Family Services, the largest part of the budget is the board and care budget of the agency. I know that from experience. And by reducing length of stay, you can reduce the cost to the government, with the outcome being that children are safe and nurtured and welcome into the community. So there are good outcomes. We also, when we started the program, had Cleveland State and Case do a study of the program, and it came out with very good outcomes, and we could certainly share that study with the council at any time if you'd like to see it.
And in terms of the permanent custody children that you said you were in conversations with moving forward on, what that's going to add to the budget? What would that look like if you started?
Right now, for the most part, the court would refer older children in permanent custody to the program, possibly children who spent a long time in residential treatment, residential care, help with the transition back into foster care or into the community, help with the transition out of care back into adulthood, into emancipation, if you will, as young adults. I don't foresee the court actually referring young children who come into permanent custody. Babies and toddlers that come into permanent custody tend to have families waiting on the other end, and it's a quicker transition through the child welfare system. What I think the court is looking at are those older youth that may have been in temporary custody for a number of years, transitioned into permanent custody, and have been in the care of the county for a long time, have behavior, emotional, mental health problems related to their maltreatment, to their time in custody, to their family issues, and to work with those to help those children better transition back into the community.
Yeah, I would just say that a lot of these families that are in their temporary custody extensions, you know, second and third extensions, and that are essentially headed towards permanent custody, that's another area where CASA adds a lot of value because they coach and mentor the family with the case plan and try to get things moving. They just can offer an extra resource. And we had alluded earlier in the presentation that the court has asked us to serve on private custody cases. So these are children of parents who were never married, and they're getting into protracted custody disputes, sometimes with multiple family members. So CASA has just started to get involved in that in hopes that we can expedite some of these cases. And again, that should save the county money when these cases are decided and the child can achieve permanency instead of having hearings and protracted custody battles that go on for years.
Okay, so kind of like a prevention.
CASA is prevention. It truly is. It prevents so many things if it can be applied. And if we can expand CASA, that prevention will be, you know, very well implemented here.
What is the age demographic of your volunteers?
The whole range from 21. We actually have a staff member that became a CASA when she was a 21-year-old college student, and then she became a staff member. And then all the way up to retired, you know, older folks. We do have a lot of retired volunteers because they have the time. One of the requirements of CASA is that you go to court during the day, and that can be hard for people with full-time jobs. So we tend to get some older folks, you know, 60s, 70s. But again, they go through the training, and they have to visit children in their homes. They have to have reliable transportation. They have to be able to meet the needs and fulfill the role. We'd love to grow our program more among working professionals and some younger folks. We've brought a few people into our program that have grown up in care. They have that perspective of being foster care, former foster care participants, if you will. So it's a little bit of everything. We'd love to see more men. We have a heavily female demographic, as you can imagine, but we do have some terrific male volunteers, and we would love to get some more of those.
And for the Ohio Youth Advisory Board, for advisory group for the foster children, do you guys have any collaborations?
We do. We sent people to testify all through the community meetings that they had years ago. We had a board member who actually presented very dynamic testimony. He had served over 21 foster kids as a CASA. And he spoke with great passion and conviction about what we need to do in foster care. And CASA is one of those resources that he argued should be broadened and more fully implemented and used to help foster youth.
So I've met with them recently, met with you recently. Any collaboration with, who did I see this week? Human trafficking collaboration? Okay.
We have a staff member assigned to that coalition and attends their meetings.
So you're all on prevention. That's good.
One of our board members is a young woman who's a lived experience person, was in the care of the county. Actually, she was in care when I was a director, which is kind of humbling to hear her describe her experience in county custody when you were in charge. She's active with Youth Move Ohio. She's active with the Foster Care Coalition. She worked with me at the Ohio Healthy Transitions Project for a couple years and has now moved into a therapeutic role at Belfair. But she is on our board, and we're actively looking for more lived experience youth to be on our board to inform us as we make some of these decisions and how we interact with our young people.
And as I always say, not just the ones that have survived it, but also the ones that are going through it now would be a great resource.
But I don't have any further questions. Do you have any, Councilman Miller?
Just a couple.
All right.
As to how many GALs we have in Cuyahoga County, and also as to whether it's common for a child to be assigned both a GAL and a CASA, or is it usually one or the other?
Great question. So my understanding is we have about 75 available guardians right now. That's a pretty low number. In the late 90s, there were over 300 of them. So they have a lot of cases, those 75 guardians. One of the philosophies behind CASA and the National CASA GAL Association is that this dual representation is very helpful to children. So depending on what's going on in the case, the children do need their own attorney and benefit from having a guardian, a legal representative. But they also benefit from having the CASA volunteer. And in the research brief that I shared with the committee members, the study was basically centered around this dual representation model, whether having both CASA and GAL, as opposed to one or the other, was beneficial to children. And one of the findings of that study was that the CASA GAL, the dual representation model, did help children achieve better outcomes. Again, as Jim referenced, shorter stays in care, lower risk of additional abuse and neglect, and achieving permanency faster. Those were the three main outcomes. And so it's always great when CASA and GAL can work together and complement each other. Sometimes they do have different opinions about what's in the child's best interest, but we think that that also can be very beneficial because it allows the jurist who will ultimately make the ruling about where the child will go, it allows them to have different perspectives to consider and more information.
That concludes your questioning, Councilman Miller?
It does. Thank you.
All right. Well, I thank you both for enlightening us today, as well as the public that is watching. And I know you have a 4 o'clock later with Administrator Merriman. So good luck with that.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you both.
Thank you,
Thank you
Councilman.
very much.
All right. Madam Clerk, our next presenter.
The next presentation is Neighborhood Leadership Institute on the One Community Program.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Councilwoman Conwell and Councilman Miller. We're excited to be here this afternoon. And also wanted to say it was just really great to hear about CASA from the perspective of founding. I have a friend that is actually a CASA. And
Ms. Jones, can you state your name for the record before you continue?
thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Marie Jones, and I am the Director of Community Health Initiatives with Neighborhood Leadership Institute.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And my husband and I are also foster adoptive parents, so we are familiar with the process, and our children are teenagers now, and they are amazing human beings. So we were so thankful for the support that we received as foster parents to actually become adoptive parents and to parent. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Slides, please.
We got some more babies if you want.
Oh, Lord. We're going to train up some folk, and that's why we need the CASAs to... All right. Again, my name is Marie Jones, and I serve as the Director of Community Health Initiatives at Neighborhood Leadership Institute. And I'd like to just simply start by saying I have come to this space and the work that we're currently doing because I'm an organic learner. And in 1991, so I'm dating myself, in 1991, I was one of the first outreach coordinators with Healthy Family, Healthy Start, which is now Moms First. And I was the outreach coordinator in the Huff neighborhood. I also was a resident in Huff, and Fannie Lewis and I did lots of work together, even though there were times that we heatedly disagreed about the process. But I remember going on a home visit with an outreach worker And I do not remember what street it was on, but I remember us taking a number of twists and turns until there was no more street. It was a dirt road, and there were no sidewalks. And I felt like we had walked into a different world. And I was thinking, is this the Huff neighborhood? This is like, I live here too. I remember us visiting with the families, and so grateful for the expert skill of outreach workers. Now we call them community health workers, because it was that relationship and connection that they had with the families that helped provide support. At that point in time, we thought that if we just simply got the family to the doctor, it would solve all the problems in the world. But we learned that that was different. And for me, at that point in time, when we walked into that space, there was 3 houses. One didn't have a door on it. Children were playing in that house that did not have a door. And I was standing there thinking, there's something going on here more than just simply getting a family to the doctor. And so that sense of isolation, the disconnectedness physically, economically, and in so many other ways has been the question that I have taken with me wherever I've gone. And so, and some of those places include work in Central Africa after the Rwandan massacre with a community of people, work in West Africa, in Dakar, Senegal, with a group of church folk, and also in Central America with coursework. And so people struggle to be whole, to be community, to raise their children, and to do that and to be well is our human quest and struggle. Again, I serve as the Director of Community Health Initiatives with Neighborhood Leadership Institute. Neighborhood Leadership Institute actually exists to train grassroots leadership so that we can make our communities healthier and a little better. Neighborhood Leadership Institute has a number of programs, one being Neighborhood Leadership Cleveland, where we have trained over 1,300 residents to provide leadership and connection in the community and to share their gift, their expertise, again, closing that gap of isolation. Also, School as Neighborhood Resource provides resources and connection for families in under-resourced communities so that the family can get together and do some healthy activity, and also where community members can offer their expertise or skill, whether it's Tai Chi or cooking or basketball. The community gets a chance to gather again. True to You is our 8th grade mentoring program that we provide mentors for every 8th grade class in the Cleveland Metropolitan School System, helping to support social emotional learning for the 8th graders in connection with the high school that they're going to go to. Also, the navigation program that we work with the Ohio Equity Institute, which is the Ohio Equity Institute's downstream strategy to help prevent infant death. We have navigated 4,500 women as of January between 2018, November 2018, and December 31st of 2022. And then the program that we're here to speak with you about this afternoon is the One Community program. One Community, our funders have been and are currently, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health has acted as the backbone agency for One Community, historically and currently. They have also acted as the entity that provides the data analytics that moves our process forward. The Ohio Equity Institute acted as the original funder for One Community in 2016, and that was for the 44128 zip code. First Year Cleveland provided funding for the One Community in 2021 to 2022. And First Year Cleveland and the Ohio Health Improvement Zone provides the current funding for One Community. Infant mortality, if you did not know, is the death of a live-born baby before his or her first birthday. It is a key health indicator, and I always say that that's not rocket science because a baby comes out of a mom's body, right? And the mom lives in a community, on a street, in a city, in a county, in a state. And so it is a key health indicator because it allows us to understand how the community is caring for its residents. Healthy People 2020, the goal for the infant mortality rate for Healthy People 2020 was 6, and the goal for Healthy People 2030 is 5. We really are working with the Ohio Equity Institute, First Year Cleveland, and other partners in the community to actually realize that goal of 5 for all communities of people. I really wanted to say that the data is, that our activities with One Community is data informed. And Richard Stacklin at the County Board of Health is our data guru. We are very grateful for the way he provides the information to us, and an information to us also in a manner that allows everyday citizens to understand and to see where they could possibly fit in addressing the issue of infant mortality. Uh-oh, I think I went too far, didn't I? No. Okay. All right. So the need for something more. In 2012, the Ohio Department of Health, along with CityMatch, a national maternal and child health organization, partnered with the Ohio Department of Health, Ohio University, and CityMatch to form what became the Ohio Equity Institute. The Ohio Equity Institute worked with 9 counties around Ohio that had high incidence of infant mortality, and most of that was due to the despair between Black and white infant mortality. The Ohio Equity Institute required each of the zip codes to determine an upstream and downstream strategy to address infant mortality in its county. Part of the Ohio Equity Institute also required that the county spoke with and connected with everyday citizens, as well as stakeholders and organizations that provided support to reduce infant mortality. In Cleveland, we became known as the Greater Cleveland Partnership to Improve Birth Outcomes. Our upstream strategy was long-acting reversible contraceptives. We actually worked with a number of medical providers to make sure that if families came in, they were able to actually receive long-acting reversible contraceptives in the same day, which was a really big issue because they had to work with the insurance companies as well as the systems, medical records, and also purchasing for each of the medical providers. Our downstream strategy was centering pregnancy, which is group prenatal care. That is a practice that has a proven track record of improving birth outcomes for families that participate. Infant mortality in Cuyahoga County, so these items were implemented in 2014, and infant mortality in Cuyahoga County actually began to decrease. And as you can see, in 2015, 2017, the overall infant mortality was 7.9. For Black infant mortality, 16.5, Hispanic, 7.9, for Caucasian, 4.3. So the great disparity that still continued to exist with the African American community was distressing for the Ohio Equity Institute partners and members at that time. At that time, I was working with NEON, Northeast Ohio Neighborhood Health Services, managing a program called Moms and Babies First, Ohio's Black Infant Vitality Program. We were very active in activities with the Ohio Equity Institute. We knew something more needed to be done, and so the Ohio Equity Institute actually approached Neighborhood Leadership Institute to investigate what it might look like for the community to be involved. With all of our expertise in infant and health and wellness and the plethora of programs that were active and available to families, we were scratching our heads trying to figure out what was the missing ingredient. Could we do something different? Neighborhood Leadership Institute then began a process of connecting Neighborhood Leadership Cleveland graduates. So our grassroots program that provides leadership training for everyday citizens across Cuyahoga County actually was the program that we utilized to provide leadership for what became known as One Community. One Community was born in 2016, and we gathered partners and implemented our process in 2017. Our process includes community training or information to the community concerning health, and that this is where the data analytics comes in and it being provided in a way that everyday citizens can understand so that they can engage. We found out what the community wanted to do, and we actually did that. We had a kickoff, a One Life kickoff at the convention center, and we had health fairs. The faith community was engaged through Save Our Babies. Pastor Knuckles gathered 42 churches that were strongly involved, and the parishioners participated by becoming health ambassadors and providing information to the community. Pastors preaching from the pulpit. We went door knocking. There were fraternities and sororities that came out and joined us in that process. And of course, everyday citizens came and participated for their neighborhood. So, the exciting news for us in 2018, because if you know anything about data process, we don't know what the data is around health metrics for 1 year until about mid-year the following year. So in 2018, we found out that infant mortality in the 44128 zip code was 0. It had never been before. And because funding priorities shifted, we were not able to continue the One Community work in 44128, and it has not been since. 0. One Community, and I've been doing this work for a very long time. One Community is the only activity or intervention that is associated with 0 infant deaths for population health. So we do have a plethora of programs. Again, I was the manager for one of them in Cuyahoga County, and our ratio of healthy birth outcomes to fatalities or infant mortality was also good. But there is not a program or activity that is associated with 0 infant deaths for population health. Now, can we prove? We don't have data or research that actually proves that One Community was the thing that did it. But we do have data and information and connection with basically every home visiting program in Cuyahoga County. And we know that for the 44128 zip code, One Community was the only difference. And as you can see, the infant mortality rates for across our county are still relatively high, and it's because of the disparity between black and white. You could also see in yellow, those are the infant mortality rates that have met the Healthy People 2020 and the Healthy People 2030 goal of 5. So we've got some work to do. Our community is only as healthy as the least healthy community that it embodies. Here also is another slide that provides data in the form of a map that provides the geography of communities that are negatively or that are negatively impacted by the social determinants of health, which we know also is related to every single health outcome that there is. Infant mortality is no different. All right. So even though we did not have funding in after 2018, we continued to do the work of gathering ourselves because at the grassroots level, we were quite clear that something special had happened and that we wanted to continue the work of helping the community be well. So we actually provided or developed a vision statement, which is that one community calls neighbors and stakeholders together and empowers them to disrupt the root causes of health disparities. In the process, building stronger communities that nurture the next generation of community leaders. And so that disruption, one of the main disruptions is information and connection to each other. Also, one of the protective factors or support is that piece of training and information about what it means to be community, how you engage and connect, where you get information from, and how we can use the current organizations, programs, churches, and community members that are involved to make sure that we are aware and abreast of what protective factors are and what the health issues are in our community. And so the vision statement is the thing that is propelling us forward. The one community is data informed, as I shared. It is resident guided. We do look for community wisdom. And what that simply means is that we find residents in the community, organizations in the community to actually guide their own process. We simply ask the question about what they want to see in relation to the information that we provide to them through, we've done information sessions through the movie Toxic, which was also a outgrowth of First Year Cleveland and an outgrowth of the work of the Ohio Equity Institute. We also have done community gatherings and information sessions using the documentary One Community, which is a local documentary that includes all of the healthcare facilities, large healthcare facilities, as well as community health workers and everyday citizens. We do know that community wisdom makes a difference because that is what guided us for the 44128 community activity. And then we look to engage the community, not doing something for the community, but providing the community with the support that they need to rally their neighbors, the organizations within their community, the churches within their community. And so we engage. The One Community 2022-23, which we currently have funding from First Year Cleveland and the Ohio Health Improvement Zone, our goal again is to improve birth outcomes and reduce infant mortality, and to increase the number of people who talk about healthy living practices with their friends and family. We believe that the turn or the connection to healthy living practices will be a good complement to to taking a look at infant mortality and addressing the issue of infant mortality and connection to one another and providing information. We are currently working in the zip codes 44108, 44110, 44112, 44128, and 44137. A team of people for each of those zip codes. They're a team of 3, a facilitator, and these are contracted people. They work an average altogether of 80 hours a month, and they are residents in that particular community, or they have a vested interest in the community because of their church work, or because they grew up in that neighborhood, or because they have a special commitment to the community or the neighborhood. We provide training for them. We utilize the Neighborhood Leadership Cleveland training format. That Neighborhood Leadership Cleveland training is a partnership with Cleveland State University Neighborhood Leadership Institute. We also have specifically had Dr. India Ford develop a specific curriculum for the facilitators and engagers specific to social determinants of health and also health disparity and the impact of history on the local communities. The infant mortality rates in the zip codes that we have chosen, of course, are data informed. The infant mortality rates, as you can see, are all most of are double digits. The only one that is not, which is still high, is 44137. We are engaged with Maple Heights because of the passion and commitment of Mayor Blackwell. Here is also another slide that provides information concerning the infant mortality rates of all of the zip codes in Cuyahoga County. As you can see, those that are highlighted in red and yellow are our zip codes that we're currently working in are among those. You can also see the divide of east and west. So we know that the redlining and the things that were done in the early 1900s are continuing to impact how we build community and also the health and wellness of citizens. The one community, the community has informed us, and this is by survey. So as part of the funding for 2021, from First Year Cleveland, we surveyed the community, and the community said to us that information is important. A consistent means of securing accurate and good information is important, and that active resident involvement in solutions is necessary. And so we have taken those 3 points, and we are utilizing that information in 2022 to further engage the community to ask how they want to see that information provided. Again, we have hired residents as consultants for each of the zip codes. We have 3 residents in each of those zip codes providing information to the community and connecting with partners that they're already connected with to create a space for residents to come to hear information and to have an opportunity to be the voice of what they want to see in their community that will help them. Currently, we have a marketing campaign, Health, Healing, and Infant Vitality. We have created a social media platform, and as a consistent means, the residents said we need a consistent means of having information provided to us in a way that we can understand it, and also a way that we can connect and roll up our sleeves and get some work done. We are doing the current survey that will end at the end of February, that the residents are telling us how they want to receive this information, whether it's at block club meetings, at church. We have a number of people who are creative, and so the plays, the art, the music, that invitation for the community to again roll up its sleeves, to be involved, and to be informed, and then to inform residents. We are going to be implementing community wisdom. We are going to, for the duration of our grant period that will end in 2023, for the current Ohio Health Improvement Zone and also the first-year Cleveland funding, we are going to continue to strengthen a social media platform, inviting people to be connected, to continue to build grassroots leadership as a component of the facilitator and engager one community process. We are providing monthly education and training to those grassroots leaders so that they can utilize their connections that exist in the community to strengthen community ties, relationships, and information and advocacy for their neighborhood. We're going to continue to build partnerships, and we do secure continued funding for the One Community project. One Community's budget is approximately $57,000 per zip code that allows us to provide engagement, activity, and create a space for residents to connect with each other, to disseminate information, and to do that in a manner that is consistent and that allows residents to partake or to participate, to engage, to do something. That is really the process of, I think, the brilliance or the power of One Community, that it still stands as the only activity, intervention in Cuyahoga County that is associated with 0 infant deaths. Calls us to continue. And
Open it up for questions.
I'm open for
All
questions.
right, I have a few. Just one of my suggestions in partnering, suggestion is to partner possibly with Hunger Network and Cleveland Food Bank and libraries to seek survey participation. Because as we all know, COVID has put us in this different world where some of our traditional places where we would find individuals have decreased. And so we're struggling, trying how to make those connections. So those are just my suggestions. Those are some of the areas that have increased where people are coming. So just a suggestion to
Thank
you.
you.
A couple questions from me. Long-acting, I didn't understand the long-acting reversal contraceptive. It was the first time I heard it, so I'm
Okay.
thinking I know what it is, but I just wanted you to
Yes.
explain.
So they are, in fact, the specific ones are eluding me. They are contraceptives that a family can use to actually have birth control without taking a pill or a monthly injection that will provide birth control, and it can also be removed.
Okay.
And so a family can then decide to have children. So long-acting reversible contraceptives.
Okay. What neighborhood was 44128?
44128 is Warrensville and also Lee Harvard. And that first decision to do that, so the County Board of Health and the Cleveland Department of Public Health were partnering with the Ohio Equity Institute. And so we needed to find a zip code that the social determinants were high, as well as it embodied both county and also the city of Cleveland. And so that's where we were.
Yeah, why you specifically chose certain zip codes. So that was one of my future questions. With many of the agencies participating with funding in 2022, 2023 for infant mortality, why do you feel there still was a disparity between blacks and whites?
Well, structural racism is the kind of the crux or the more immediate. For me, the question is then how do we build protective factors to help us mitigate some of the impact of the structure? For me, it's almost kind of in a meantime. So we're working on addressing the issue of structural racism and how it manifests itself. But in the meantime, having things in place to help address some of the root causes or connection. And so again, I go back to that Healthy Family, Healthy Start visit in the Huff neighborhood. It really was about helping that family come out of that place of isolation. And so those relationships helped us. Also, and we talk about addressing the root causes of disparity, information and connection to that information by way of a person and not just a flyer or a post on social media, but by way of a person. So if my neighbor, my family member is working on, has this information and is connecting me then with the home visiting support and encouraging me, then that's another level of intervention or layer of support. And so those social connections really is what one community really did in 44128, because again, we ended up having the fraternities and sororities, door knocking, pastors preaching from the pulpit about health and the need for that, about talking about the protective factors of birth, of long-acting reversible contraceptives, but also of breastfeeding, and creating, in fact, one of the activities that we did as part of 44128 is we worked with churches and daycares to create breastfeeding-friendly spaces in the church or the daycare. And so normalizing I think breastfeeding, Black mothers breastfeed, they had data that said breastfeeding actually decreases poor birth outcomes by 50%. And so that's big. That's a natural protective factor. Also, one of the other protective factors, we know, I think that it was a Princeton study done, that having a healthcare provider that looks like the person receiving the health care. And so we are also partnering with Village of Healing and other nurse-family partnership through our navigation program. And we Bright Beginnings, we do the central intake. So every home visiting program that is in Cuyahoga County, we know of and are connected with to support the forward movement. And so those programs are actually protective factors, but everyday citizens don't know that. And so making sure that we are armed with information is the first disruption.
My last question is, how often do you bring neighbors and stakeholders together to talk about the health disparities?
So for the 44128, we actually did that monthly, and then we did activities that were that also became offshoots. And in fact, one of the activities that we did that people are still asking for is the community conversations. We had those at the Kappa compound in Warrensville. In fact, Nyla Mohammed is here. She was the person that gathered us, and there were, I'll call them community legends. Paul Hill talking about family and relationship, just rich, rich conversation and people connecting. And the information, again, is the first disruption. And then the relationships connecting people and information helps us all to be a little healthier.
Councilman Miller, do you have a couple questions?
Yes, this is a spectacular demonstration of the value of information and community organizing. And the thought that I have is yes, the infant mortality is a huge problem, and the racial disparity is just unacceptable. And I also note that your statistic lists the number of fatalities for 2016 through 2021 in Cuyahoga County at 684. And that's fewer than our opiate overdose fatalities for 1 year. And I just have to think that this kind of a model could also apply to preventing opiate fatalities, because what we're doing now is not working, and I just put that out there that we should start thinking about that, because for a relatively small amount of money compared to what we're currently spending, we could cover the whole county on a program like this. And if we were to, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do both of them together, to do a program with the same kind of information and community organizing approach and focus on both problems. And it could make a huge difference. So I just put that out there for us to think about.
I agree. In fact, that's why our vision statement does not say infant mortality. It says we call neighbors and stakeholders together to address the root cause of health disparity. So you're very correct, Councilman Miller. It could be opioids. It could be education. So the social determinants of health, right? And I actually was looking at the social determinants of health and thinking we need to add, I've personally, and it's part of our training for our One Community staff folk, is that social isolation or social connectedness as it relates to marginalized groups of people also needs to be addressed. I mean, that impacts our health and wellness. So I agree. I do believe that this model could be used to address what ails us as community, because it's about getting the community engaged and connected, and that we can clearly advocate for ourselves and support each other. So
I would be interested in seeing you run the statistics on opiate fatalities in the 5 zip codes that you're currently serving, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if your program makes a positive impact on that without you even specifically focusing on it, let alone if you did.
yes, very correct. I agree. We'll take you up on that.
Forward to that. Those 5 zip codes. I think one of them was mine. So thank you again for your time and wanting to share this, not just in person, but for all those residents that are listening in or that may view this committee at a later date. I always love presentations. I love things that are going to connect to the issues that we're facing. This is a way to kind of share that broadly with those that watch, you know, many of the various issues that we deal with on the county level. And so, again, we thank you. We thank both of you for presenting today. They're correlated in some ways. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. One community and what you guys offer, just keeping the baby alive, and if that baby falls under circumstances where their parents can't take care of them, they may need a CASA advocate. So
That's right.
everything is connected.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
Thank you again for coming.
All right. And we will take you up on the offer of taking a look at opioids and the impact that one community could have. And we'll return.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let us know. Any miscellaneous business? Seeing none, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.